It's most obviously the biggest game of the year, the SEC Western Division Showdown this Saturday. Mississippi State going to Alabama to take on the Tide. Is it the biggest game of the year, though? I may have some questions for Ben George of Tide 99.1 concerning ramifications of the Bulldogs and the Tide getting together this Saturday. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Good, Mark. Let me go ahead and give you a little credit for your prediction last week. I believe you hit it right on, right? Am I correct in that?
Well, it wasn't exactly a prediction on second thought. I did throw out the score that I just kind of felt like it was going to be a 20-13 type game.
You're right on. Well done.
So speaking of that, the College Football Playoff Committee comparing teams, comparing all the results, the criteria. We know what the criteria is. One of the criteria is how a team plays. And Alabama defeats a really good LSU team. And I like to point out to people who say LSU is only 7-3 and only ranked 20th in the country, is that if you take away and consider who LSU has lost to, especially the last two games being extremely gut-wrenching games for LSU in losing, or I'm thinking of the Ole Miss game. Obviously, they pulled that one out, but they lose to Alabama in the type fashion that they did. LSU, throw them in another conference. Who knows what their record is right now and what they're ranked. So Alabama wins the game in Death Valley, which few do, but it was almost gifted to them in the final minute. Granted, they took advantage of the opportunities they had. So how do you rate the LSU win?
I rate it as a pretty good win. I mean, not a great win. I think in the context of the SEC and this rivalry, I think it was a great win. From a national perspective, it probably wasn't a great win. It was probably a good win. It's a tough environment, but Alabama didn't play well, Mark. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat that. They had a lot of struggles on offense. Play calling was a little shaky. They threw the ball a lot more than they probably should have. And they went against, quite frankly, a quarterback that hadn't had any success yet. He didn't have a lot in that game, but he was able to scramble, get some yards with his legs a little bit in that game, and it has to give you some concern heading into a matchup with a running quarterback now, a guy that's going to do that intentionally and frequently. So, yeah, I think it was a pretty good win, but for Alabama, any win's a good win at this point. You keep winning, and you're going to be right where you want to be at the end of the year.
Okay, Ben, Bama, Mississippi State, if you grab the average college football fan, they would say, obviously, this is the biggest game of the year. It's 1 versus 3. We're in week 12. It's huge. And obviously, it is huge. But I don't know if it's as huge as it would appear to be on the surface, considering if Mississippi State at number 1 and with Florida State dropping to number 3 despite the undefeated record, they are the clear consensus, if there would be a thing with the College Football Playoff Committee, number 1 team. So if they lose, Mississippi State, not 31-10, but in a close game in Tuscaloosa on the road to a new maybe number 2 or number 3 team, I just can't imagine Mississippi State's going to drop that far. And then if they tack on another quality win in defeating an Ole Miss team at the end of the country, can't imagine the Dogs are going to drop that far. Of course, Bama's already lost a game. They're going to drop. But if Auburn's already only at number 9 after losing to an unranked team, I can't imagine that Alabama's going to drop that far. I know I'm talking out on them, but that they're going to drop that far, being number 5 in the country right now. So he's huge, but maybe not quite what everybody's making them out to be.
Well, I don't quite share your optimism on Alabama having a really good chance or even a favorable chance to make the playoffs should they lose this week. I mean, it would take a lot of breaks, I think, for them to get in. And on Mississippi State's side, I want to wait and see what the committee does with Mississippi State having a loss, because that's when all the people that have been pointing their fingers at the SEC scheduling and the one-loss teams in the SEC, all that criticism and critique rate the Mississippi State schedule, because they don't have, and they'll start pointing at this, they don't have any great wins. Now that we've moved along and some of these teams have gotten beat up by some other really good teams, such as LSU with 3 losses now, A&M, they'll probably point to the Alabama blowout loss, although they came back and got a good win. And then Auburn, Auburn could end up having 3 losses after this weekend's over. So who do you point to as being that real good win if it's not Alabama? Now they have a chance later in the season to get it against Ole Miss, and it might bump them up to that 4 level. But I don't know, Mark. I think they might knock them down to to 5 or 6, depending on how it goes. Now, they have to keep it close. I think that's the most important thing. They can't get blown out in this ball game to have a chance.
Okay, let's jump on the field with Mr. Dak Prescott, who may win a Heisman Trophy when it's all said and done if he can finish this thing out undefeated. Mobile quarterback. Of course, he's had the great season. It didn't play last year when the game was fairly close. I think Alabama really wasn't threatened late, but they only scored 20 points in the game. The Mississippi State defense played well. Prescott against this defense that, again, the stereotype is that they cannot contain the mobile quarterback.
Yeah, that's concern number one. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it yet this week, but you think back to last year, and you referenced it, a tight ball game. Dak Prescott did not play in that game a year ago in Starkville. He was injured in that one. Coming off the week before that, he was in a shootout with A&M, a good A&M team, in which they came up just short, but he had on the road over 100 yards rushing. He had a good day passing the ball as well. That guy would have given Alabama some problem. Tyler Russell did not do that offensively a year ago. So Alabama was able to play pretty conservatively and just not make mistakes last year. Now, they almost did a couple of times in that game. They avoided them, but it's only a 20-7 ball game. Now, if Dak Prescott plays in that game, I think you're talking about a game that's a lot tighter. And who knows, Mark, when we saw the way they finished that year, it wouldn't have been absurd to think that they could have lost that game had a really good quarterback been playing against them that night. We saw the way they finished. So, and if that didn't happen, we'd be talking about this game totally different. Mississippi State would probably be getting more respect than they have because traditionally this game's been a blowout, been very lopsided for Alabama. And if that had been the case last year, they would be getting more respect. Now, it didn't happen, whatever. But I think it's going to give Alabama some fits this week. Thankfully, I think they've, we've talked about this. They've seen these guys. They've got some experience with these offenses. We'll see how they make adjustments. It's good that they have Reggie Ragland's been playing a lot better at linebacker. I think that's going to help him out a lot. He's been a lot more motivated. But they're going to come ready to play. Dak's going to give him a lot of trouble, and this is his chance. You mentioned the Heisman. This is that stage that he could really propel himself up there with Mariota.
Now, the other narrative in this game on the field would be the Mississippi State front seven's about just as good as they come, but the back four has been suspect, getting ripped apart earlier in the season and against some capable teams in the SEC. So, Mississippi State's defense against Alabama throwing the ball to Amari Cooper and company.
Yeah, I want to see how Lane Kiffin attacks it. Will they go a little more conservatively and try to run the ball? Because they didn't have a lot of success passing last week. They did on the final drive, which kind of erased everything else. But they didn't pass the ball well. Now, they've been a great team at home. We talked about this before. They've been really successful moving the ball and have come out clicking at home. So maybe that's the case. But I think they try to go a little more conservatively to try to keep Dak Prescott off the field. But as a Mississippi State fan, and the one thing I pointed to all year is why I didn't think they could go undefeated is because their defense just isn't at that level. I mean, their pass defense ranks 123rd out of 128 teams in FBS. So, I mean, it's as bad as it gets in football. And he's not going against Mark. He's not going against the best passing attacks in the country. I mean, you're talking about UAB. They've been okay offensively at times. They put up big chunks of yardage. They play South Alabama, Southern Miss, not a good team. LSU, no offense. Now, A&M was playing pretty well at the time when they played them. But that could have been a lot worse because they dropped a lot of passes. So, I think that has to be a big concern, and I can't imagine a team with a defense and a secondary that's that poor, has been giving up that much yardage, can continue to win ball games.
You know and I know that the way teams are ranked by either AP voters or coaches or now the College Football Playoff Committee is a bit different sometimes than the way Vegas views teams and the teams that they completely trust. This point spread tells me that Alabama might be the most trusted team in the nation by Vegas. They are at home, which is typically a 3-point swing, and Bama has been a dominant team at home this year. They've had their shaky calls, most notably the Arkansas game, on the road. Also, if you consider going to LSU, forget the 7-point spread because they went to overtime. In terms of just the regulation time, that's an even game, 13-13. So is Bama given just a little bit too much credit maybe against the number one team in the country, at home 7-point favorite?
Yeah, and Alabama hasn't been very good against the spread this year. I mean, they've been winning games, but the spreads have been pretty large in all of these. And, and they haven't been covering. I mean, last week they did get lucky to cover, as you mentioned. But yeah, I mean, I think they are getting it's hard to say, Mark. It's at home. I mean, this is a game that they should be able to wear down that defense at Mississippi State, and Bama's defense has improved each week, it seems like, and they're playing pretty well. I think it's going to be closer than that. I really think that Mississippi State can get in this game early and battle it out. I mean, I think they can come out, and they're going to be fired up. We've seen this position before. A couple of years ago, Mississippi State came in undefeated to Tuscaloosa, had a lot of hopes, lost that game, then lost, I think, 3 more the rest of the year. It happened in '99. I think you might have been around for that game in '99 when they came in undefeated to Tuscaloosa with Jackie Sherrill in a game, when the Who Let the Dogs Out was the #1 song in the country, and they played that on their sidelines a lot. But they came into that game with a lot of confidence. It was a tight game, but they lost, by 12. So this has been a spot that's been real tough for them. They've never been here, Mark, in their program history. I think that's the biggest thing is how can they handle not only being the #1 team, because they had some struggles against Arkansas. They've been fortunate, though, to have a very easy schedule the last few weeks. So they come into this game pretty focused, but how can they handle the pressure being #1 on the road in a game that they traditionally lose? That's the question to me.
Yeah, we're going to break open the Mark Rogers annals of covering Mississippi State football on the field there at Scott Field in Starkville or going to Alabama. Yeah, the '99 team had a backloaded schedule. They didn't schedule anyone non-conference, kind of like they don't anymore. I don't know why they never schedule anybody at Mississippi State non-conference. But anyway, yeah, they roll into Tuscaloosa 8-0. They got the wake-up call in '99 to the Bama team that went to the Orange Bowl. The 2 games that I remember where Mississippi State challenged and actually won one of those 2 was in '94. Mississippi State had a decent team. They went to the Peach Bowl eventually. They had a 2-headed running game with Michael Davis and Bowie was the other kid's name, and they just ran it down. Who was that defensive tackle that played for Bama? He wore 75. Shannon. He was a great soundbite. Good kid. Played like 4 years at Bama.
Yeah.
A really solid player. Not an NFL player, but a solid player. Anyway, ran it down their throats. Had like a 10-point lead in the 4th quarter. And then Jay Barker worked his magic, and they came back and scored 2 touchdowns like in the last 6 minutes and won it. And then in '96, Mississippi State didn't even get to a bowl game. They weren't that good. They went like 5-6 that season, and they knocked off Alabama in Starkville in a pretty ugly game. And actually, my son was born that night. So anyway,
yeah,
we digress, or I digress at this point. So those are the matchups there. TJ Yeldon, how critical is his health? Do we expect him back? I'm expecting him to play, but he only got 15 carries against LSU, which I thought was a bit odd that they chose to throw it 45 times, and Yeldon only got 15 carries in that game. But even if he's on the field, is he really going to be, do we expect him to be effective and given the rock that much?
I think he's going to get more carries. He is slated to play. I think he'll get probably about that same number. You still have to be concerned with his ankle and how he's going to hold up, taking a big hit or getting twisted up in the pile like he did late in that game and fumbled the ball away on a play where he looked like he got hurt, and that pain kind of caused him to lose control of the ball. That has to be a little bit of concern. Can't turn over the ball in this game. And I think Alabama needs to run the ball more on Saturday. I think they will. And I think y'all will be a big part of that attack. But not having a really an established third back, it's kind of weird to say that. You need a third back on the team to be successful running the ball. But Alabama's been able to do that with the change of pace guy and that third back. And they don't have that really right now with the absence of Kenyon Drake. So I think that's kind of hamstrung them a little bit. But I think they'll be able to pound the ball a little bit more with these 2 guys. But look, Mark, I mean, I say that, but they might come out and throw it 40 times again against the secondary and just go all short passes to Amari Cooper and let him do the ball. Essentially just giving him handoffs, throwing it down the line of scrimmage. The same kind of way that way. Instead of fighting with that defensive line, why not just let him work against that secondary?
Yeah, aside from the personnel and the matchups and the X's and O's, again, to get back to what you alluded to, from a mindset standpoint, this is nothing new for Alabama. This is no big deal. #1 comes to town. Okay, we have top 10 matchups all the time at Alabama. For Mississippi State, I think where it typically hits a team is either running out of that tunnel and feeling the vibe from the crowd on the road and understanding that they're number one and they're playing Alabama. So if they come out of the gate and they make it through those first couple series and they're okay, then I think they're going to be okay and be fairly competitive in the game. Or the other time I think it hits a team that's new to the big stages in the clutch, then in the last 5 minutes, if it's a close game, it may hit them again. Hey, we're in a game against Alabama. We're up by 3. They're driving. Can they make the big stop, or can they move it down the field with Prescott at quarterback when they have to score in the last few minutes?
Yeah, I think it'll be more important on the front end, honestly, just to stay in that game and get to the fourth quarter in a tight ball game. Because I still think, even being ranked number 1, you have to have a little bit of that mindset of being an underdog with the way the point spread is. Because nobody's given them a chance this week. I mean, who have you seen that's picked Mississippi State to win this game outside of maybe Danny Cannell? I don't know who else has made that pick this week. So they got to still go in, even if they have the number 1 attached to them. It means nothing in this game because they still are a bit of an underdog. So I think for them, getting out early, not getting down, the way they put Auburn down 21-0 in Starkville, nothing like that can happen in this game for them. Just get out there, get through the first couple series, get a couple stops, and then settle in and play some football, and I think they can hang in. I think it's going to be a pretty close game.
Danny Cannell must have picked Mississippi State because he considered them less of an SEC team than Alabama. I'm guessing that he figures that Alabama is the foundation of the SEC, so Mississippi State's just a little less of an SEC team. He couldn't go outside the conference and grab a team to beat Alabama, so it had to be Mississippi State. So,
yes, him or your boy Joey Galloway, he's also got some pretty interesting takes on the college football season this year.
Okay, I'll have to check those out. And I have yet to make a prediction on the game, so who knows? Maybe I'll envision a Mississippi State upset.
You're not going to give it to me, the prediction now, Mark? I'll give you mine. My score right now, I'm going to keep the tradition alive of underestimating this defense for Alabama. I'm going to say 38-31. We're going to see some points. We're going to see a game that the West Coast is going to enjoy, I think. Look, I think Dak Prescott's going to put up some points. I've said this every week. I think the defense. I thought LSU'd be able to move the ball a little bit better last week. So who knows? I have no problem being wrong again, but I'm going to put it out there, 38-31.
All right, Ben. We've got it down here, 38-31 tied. And I will not anticipate a great game. I don't know. It could be a great game, but I will not be shocked if it's a 14-point win for the Tide as well, and they kind of establish something early in the game and kind of cruise home to victory. So we shall see. All right, Ben, appreciate the time. Enjoy the football.
No problem. We'll talk to you next week, preview the Western Carolina ball game. Big game.